G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Christie David, and I run a mortgage broking business called Atelier Wealth, where we help property investors start out and scale up their property portfolios. But what we're really in the business of is helping investors make confident property decisions. In order to do that, what we want to do is get access to people who have been there, done that, but are also helping their own clients on the journey as well, so we can learn from their successes, but also learn from their pitfalls to avoid on the journey too, so we don't pay what we call a dumb tax. In the process, I, as a mortgage broker, I get to deal with a lot of subsequent buyers, for example, and then in turn, their trusted professional network as well, which includes buyers agents, conveyancers, financial planners, and accountants, which is why we bring them on the show, because we want to give you access to their brain, but also their results. And that's what this episode's all about, because it's very, very rare that we get people to lift the hood on their portfolios and actually show what is going on from the numbers. And that's why I'm really, really excited for today. Julian Khursigara from Search Party Property. Welcome on the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Great to be here.
Mate, great to have you on. I mean, we've spoken quite a few times and had the privilege of getting to know yourself, your business that you share with Luke as well, called Search Party Property. You guys have been around for some time, which obviously is no accident when you start to get results.
Yep.
And we'll come into your business ethos and what you've been doing for your own clients recently. But just to kind of take a back step on who Julian is. So I know that you've been in the game for a little bit, which obviously reflects that you guys are playing with a straight bat.
Yep.
That's one. I know you're a dad to two girls as well, so and you're a little bit more ahead of me because your daughter's a teenager, so
that's right.
I think there's almost something else there in terms of sharing some knowledge and insights for me as well. Keen AFLs and Swannies fan, which I know is going to push a few people's buttons, and I guess relaxing, maybe a nice single malt, for example, to chill out, relax, and put on some tunes as well, mate. So I want to learn about Julian the person. So what I call the 3 Ps, a bit of yourself personally, a bit of yourself professionally, and a bit of your property journey as well, if you want to share with us.
Sure. So, thank you for that intro. Personally, I, from an education background, did okay in high school, not great, didn't really know what I wanted to do, typical teenager. And being Indian, my dad said you should become an accountant's son. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. Did 2 years of that and realised I hated the accounting side, but loved the economics, the marketing, the business side of it. And
it's always a good foundation though, right? Like the accounting side.
But it really helps me now, because when I got into management in the corporate world, understanding P&Ls and budgets is a huge advantage. So I had to learn to be good at accounting in some ways. But so did that, left, didn't finish that degree, and then went into work in a travel company, and then sort of loved that industry. And then I finished off and did a tourism marketing major, and then sort of engrossed myself in that industry for about 7 or 8 years, working in a wholesale business, which was the biggest company in Australia. I got on a training management program very quickly.
Fantastic.
And then went into airlines and then 5-star hotels, which was probably the best training ever. The customer focus in 5-star hotels, it's like nothing I've ever seen. And I think that was good for me at that young age to really ingrain those disciplines for the future.
Wonderful. And we'll talk before about how your work has taken you across the world, which I think is phenomenal, right? Like being able to work and spend some time in India, for example, and travel around the world. So what would have been your highlights?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky, like I said, working in airlines in that industry. I was traveling all the time. And then India was then I transitioned into more marketing, but what we call customer engagement marketing, so loyalty. Yeah. So working with the banks and creating their loyalty initiatives. And then we've been working with big companies like Optus and Telstra and banks around the employee engagement.
Nice one.
How to incentivize, motivate, get better results. So I did a lot of that. So India was, a 3.5 year assignment to build a company there from scratch. 2 young girls and my wife. And excellent fun. My wife we worked together, which you understand. And, that was challenging. We started off in a little hotel room back to back every day, and that was tough. And then obviously we grew to 50 staff within those time. But it was a real eye-opener, great for my career, but also just from a personal reflection and understanding how lucky we are to be in this country and, be really grateful for what we have. And sort of then decided I'd love that entrepreneurial spirit of building things and came back to Australia and sort of went on that journey.
Isn't that a great perspective? Whenever we get clients that I'm going to I don't swear very often, but the bitch and moan about like property prices. I say, look at this country. Like seriously, look at this country. Look at our infrastructure. Look at our weather. Look at our healthcare system. Yes, we're in a rising rates economy, for example, but there's things that are out of our control. But however, look at where we live and the lifestyle that we have and the freedoms that we have. And like, there's a price to pay for living in such a beautiful, lucky country. And
that's right.
It comes with a high purchase price, for example, but our incomes are fairly good and stable. And then to be able to go to the next level and buy investment properties in this country, it's a real privilege. It's not a right.
Yeah, you look at places like Europe where they don't dream about investing there.
Correct.
They're not big investors in property because they just don't turn over there. Generational wealth and generational properties in some of those countries.
Correct.
And also just having a house it's unheard of. You always live in an apartment, right? So
there's statistically some of the biggest houses in the world and some of the most unused rooms per night in the world in a household, right? Is some of the stats that we've heard of.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's I guess that's a healthy perspective to have when we want to set the foundation to talk about investing in property. So if we take that vein and we talk about where we are currently, because I think it'd be we can't overlook what's going on in the current market. I mean, you and I have had a chat. Last couple of years, we've gone from, say, being the hunters to being the hunted.
Yeah.
And people were like just knocking the doors down. Look, I want to get into the market. I want to buy, for example. The tide has certainly shifted, which is changing rates and maybe an uncertainty around the economy, for example, which then feeds into lack of confidence a little bit. So what I want to ask you is, how have you seen that play out from the investor of, say, the last couple of years to the investor of today?
Yeah, I think it's I've often looked at the analogy, especially over the last couple of years, where if you think about the share market, the Warren Buffetts of the world will train you to buy in the dip of a market.
Yeah.
Yet in our industry, property investing industry, it tends to charge when the fear of missing out kicks in and tends to buy in the peak because we're really governed by the press. It's Australia's favourite topic at a barbecue. So we tend to get governed by that. We move around. Banks will release these huge headlines around COVID. The market's going to drop by 30%, but it went up the other way.
Totally.
Right now, one of the banks is saying we predict that interest rates are going to drop dramatically over the next year. And so that is probably good for us until the investors looking to come back into the market. But these are big statements and we're governed by that. So I think that's the big one I see is just that mindset of short-term thinking of, that fear of missing out instead of looking at it in a long-term objective, between, minimum of 10 years as opposed to, even longer, depending what age you are coming in.
Correct. So how do you have that conversation around what I call the market resilient investor? Because we're going to go through cycles. I mean, you go back over the last few years, you go GFC, we had the tightening around interest-only lending, for example, was kind of when I kicked off broking. And then we had a dip in prices and then we had the surge in COVID. Now we've come into 10 consecutive rate rises. Like, strap yourself in. Like, when is the right time? And it's like, obviously, hindsight's a beautiful thing to go, that was the right time to be buying. So how do you kind of translate that to go, ignore the market conditions, but not be tone deaf at the same time?
Yeah, I guess one thing about having a little bit of age and experience in the market is we've seen those cycles. And I think about the investor right now, the last 10 years have been bliss.
Correct.
No interest rate rises, a couple of big spikes in most capital cities in 17 and 21.
Yeah.
So they kind of, if you're in that sort of age bracket, you're like, well, this is really easy.
Totally.
But I've had properties in the greatest, city of the world to invest in Sydney and hasn't made $1 for 6 years. So you understand, even though that was a painful time, we were paying much higher interest rates back then, but you understand it works its way out if you hold on long enough and work through it. So I think the key things are understanding their why are they investing, their mindset.
Yeah.
Are they short-term thinkers? Are they long-term thinkers? What's their risk appetite? Creating a buffer, having some sort of buffer within your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Employment's important. What sort of industry you're in? We have a lot of doctors and professors and dentists, and these guys will always have a job.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
And that's why banks love them, which is like 90% no LMI, just most like 9 out of 10
they
of
keep rolling.
Professions. Yeah.
And even someone like a teacher who we don't perceive as being a high income earner, but they still earn very well.
Yeah.
But they're never unemployed.
Correct.
They're constantly working, nurses, people like that. So, those industries are good industries to when you see that coming through as a client.
Yeah.
So buffers and just finance is the key.
Yeah.
Finding a great mortgage broker like yourself and going through that with them and making sure they understand the property investing, understand your goals, and how your mindset feels about investing long term. Are you just going to buy one property like, the majority of investors do in Australia, and because either they get it wrong or they just want to get one property and able to go to a barbecue and say, I've got one, I'm a property investor, I've got one property.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, for us, we often say finance is king and is the key.
Correct.
Because I can talk about property for days with you or our clients, but if they don't have finances, we're not going to proceed into a purchase.
Yeah, and it's funny you look at the world that way, right, as a buyer's agent, because probably most people's objections are around the finance or borrowing capacity or loan repayments. I'm on the other side of the fence, and I'm often saying the other side of the coin is, well, there's no loan without a property. So you can sit here and stress about the interest rate or the repayments. We haven't even talked about what asset you're buying or what type of property you've got as well. And you're not buying the loan, you're buying the property. That's the asset.
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking to potential new clients, I'm like, I can't sell a loan. You need a property to then enable the loan. But in the same vein, I'm like, you don't look at a car and go, hang on, the running costs are this high, the insurance is this high, the full tank of petrol costs this much. You're looking at the outcome of the car, which is it's going to get me from point A to point B, or as I'm upgrading a car and maybe it's a status symbol, or maybe it's just something else you've aspired to as well. So the reason you're buying the car is far bigger than it needs to get me from point A to point B. The reason you're buying the investment property, it's going to get me an uplift in my either income, so cash flow, or uplift in asset position, so capital growth, for example, and then springboards me able to buy the next one. So the rate almost becomes irrelevant. It's actually about the asset performance as well. And goes to your point about one property, I think it's either I've got one and I'm pretty happy with that, or I've bought one and I've made a bad decision as well.
Yeah. And that's a common one. Quite often we'll say, I've got a property, and you almost preempt the next question, the next answer. So where did you buy that? I bought it in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne, and it hasn't made any money in 10 years. And straight away you're like, high-rise apartment, right? And they're like, that's correct. And you just know that's going to be the answer. So you unravel that. You either say, well, let's have a look at it. Either you maybe a good chance to move that on. Again, building that team. Luke has a great acronym called Turning on Your Tap. So building your team, T. So that's a great mortgage broker, a good tax-effective accountant understands property investing, whether you use a buyer's agent or not, but obviously a good legal conveyancer, having your team, then taking action.
Yeah.
Actually doing something with that team, and then having patience. So in property, you need to have patience because we do have different cycles that we work through.
I love patience. It's almost the other way when it gets spooked about 10 properties in 10 years or whatever the headline is.
They're great headlines, right?
Some people get there, but I'm like, patience is a virtue, and it's like the patient investor. There's a lot to be said about some of that delays gratification as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do want it a bit. And again, going back to this last 10 years, I think that's part of the reason, right? They've had very good interest rates, and it's been a good buyer's market.
Correct. And the goal for today is to lift the hood, and I'm really grateful that you are willing and open to sharing this. So we don't normally do this, which is we go through numbers. So if you're listening to this podcast, you probably want to jump on the video version so you can actually see what we're going to be going through on a case-by-case basis. So before we do kick off, I just want to stress that this podcast and this discussion is general in nature and not intended to give advice. If you do need advice, please seek out a paid professional to guide and support you as well. So what we're going to do is start with the first case study. Now, having a look here, you've got Belinda, who's a corporate executive, and Belinda's gone from buying one property to then building a portfolio of 3 within a 12-month period. Yeah, so again, it's kind of people go, hang on, I thought we spoke about patience a minute ago. It's like, well, hang on. What we often find is once people buy that first one and they've got a taste for it, they've then got this confidence to go, okay, let's go again. And you're like, yeah, I knew that you'd cross over once you actually bought and you saw what was going to happen. Is that fair?
That's fair. It's about, where did their finance lead them as well? What finance do they have? How have they been assessed?
Yeah.
And then, okay, let's just get the first one right. Let's get that, see how you feel after that. We could easily say, you're buying 3, we'll lock you in for 3. But we're like, get the first one, reassess, go through our buying process again, strategy. Every session we do a strategy first, and then we buy again. So we don't just keep buying on repeat. We stop, pause, look at the pro, how do you feel? run another strategy session, and then buy again.
Beautiful. Very good. Very good. Very measured response. Something that you've mentioned here, which I think is quite pertinent, I don't want to overlook, is so Belinda's a single mum. Yeah. I think it's really important because I see a very strong increase in the number of single parents, not just single mums, single dads, for example, going, I know I need to rebuild my asset position, and they've got to now take action because obviously the clock's ticking, right? Maybe mums have come out of the workforce, lack of superannuation, for example. Maybe you've got the family home, so asset rich but cash poor is probably a common scenario here as well. But also know that they've got to go to a professional, which is I could do it myself, but I might make mistakes along the way versus delegating this to a professional that knows what they're doing as well. So is that part of that conversation that happens with these type of buyers as well?
Yeah, very much. It's understanding where they're at in their lives. How do they feel about buying a property? So with Belinda, for example, corporate executive, very smart lady, very good career, and has one son, and just busy as well. Running to the office, getting home, after school care, all these type of things. So she didn't have time, didn't have the knowledge to do her research. So then she entrusted professionals to help her with that. I guess like the way we took our approach, everyone starts with a strategy session before we talk about the property.
Beautiful.
Using software like game plans. Jordan, I'm not sure if you had Jordan on, but
I've definitely got to bring him on. I've heard good things. I've actually had a chance to look through game plans as well.
So we go through that, get all that, 10, 20, 30-year plans. Belinda's in her 30s, so we can stretch that out.
Nice.
She's not in her 50s where we probably don't look that far ahead, so to speak. So, get that first fund right, making sure we stick within that budget. Just because someone has, $1.2, $1.4 million doesn't mean you need to spend every cent of it. And where do you feel comfortable spending? Because they're normally quite nervous at that first property.
Yeah, the first one's that cornerstone property. So, like I said, you're very generous with where you've bought. And I think it's putting your money where your mouth is, right? Like to show your results. So let's go from brief to then there's obviously a lot of, when you go through the strategy session, what's driving your decision. And then the next stage is, okay, let's look at a particular market. So out of the country, why did you choose? Because it looks like it's near Kippa-Ring, for example. How did you zone in on that area, mate?
Yeah, that property is, exactly right, Kippa-Ring. So what we will do then, once we have the brief, the strategy session, at the end of that, we put together a buying brief.
Yeah.
So we're quite visual, we're using maps, we're, showing all the deals we do. Yeah, we have nothing, for us, it's an educational process as well.
Yeah.
It's not just saying buy with us, trust us.
Yeah.
It's actually, we're going to educate you on what we do. There's a 40-step buying process. There's, dozens and dozens of metrics of data that we look at, and here they all are.
Yeah.
And here's our documentation, here's our due diligence report. So once we have the buying brief, we start using the data to map that out, looking at the price points. The key ones would always be the price points,
yield,
the vacancy rates, education, schooling, what's happening in that area, development, infrastructure. So Brisbane, we know from a macro level quite well what government spending. Olympics is not the reason why Brisbane is booming, but the infrastructure is certainly a good reason.
Yeah.
Then you talk about migration.
Correct.
Education, a big one in Brisbane with the students coming in. What's coming up as well? Where are they building? Like everything here, we have a shortfall of new housing coming. So that's good for the established market.
Yeah. Yeah, spot on.
So we do that and then give them a due diligence report when we find the property.
Yeah.
Full detailed report. You don't need to buy.
Yeah.
Just read through it. We read through it with you. If you like it, we go and negotiate and secure the deal. If you don't like it, no problems, but we get a feedback.
Okay.
And then we go out and find you another property. So there's no pressure to we have to do what's comfortable for them. Obviously, we're going to give always our best advice.
Yeah.
Because some people are going to be timid about making that decision. So we do have to encourage them sometimes. But generally, we don't just want them to take our word for it. We want them to understand why we're buying as well.
Nice one. Well said. So take me through then, and this is what we said just before we jumped on, which is we can give away the area, right? It's like me giving away the bank. When I talk to a client, it's like, well, hey, we can solve this and here's where we're going to go to. It doesn't necessarily mean the client can then go there, for example. There's a bit of a secret sauce that then comes with us, how we package a loan up to a bank, for example, and get it approved versus going direct and trying to get it approved yourself.
Yeah.
The same would be in your case, which is you can give the suburb, it doesn't guarantee success because you could buy a lemon in a good area. So then how do you go from suburb to street to then location and then the actual asset that you say yes to as opposed to what you say no to?
Very right. I've been to areas, streets where one side is housing commission and the other side is not. So you've got these beautiful green lawns on one side and you look on the other side and you've got cars jacked up on bricks on the other side. Now, there's nothing wrong with that area, but that's going down to street level. If you didn't know that,
correct,
you could buy on the wrong side of the street.
And when you're searching purely on like searching from lowest to highest price, and like you're going to buy based on price, that's what you don't actually get to see. It's intangible.
Correct. So I guess the answer to your question is just having people on boots on the ground. So every property we've ever sold, one of our team have inspected it. And been through that property. We take videos for our clients. Majority, I'd say 95% of our clients are not in the state that they're buying in. Wow. So we're, borderless investing. So one of our team will do that. So we don't use, no disrespect to real estate agent, but we don't use the real estate agent to take that video because their job is to sell the property.
Totally.
Our job is to buy it. So we want to be independent on that. And also even the property manager, we'll use their services to manage the property, but not to make the decision if it's the right property and take videos for us, because we may do that later in the transaction if you've already put down our offers and things, but not when is that the property we're going to buy for the client. Because sometimes a few cracks in the walls or a few things that aren't picked up in a video camera can make all the difference.
Yeah, well said, mate. And that's what we talk about, having a trained eye. Looked at, I'm assuming by this stage, look at thousands, if not tens of thousands of properties. How long you guys been in the game for. So there's things that you're automatically going to go, hey, look, I can see that this is going to be a future problem. For example, a well-done renovation versus a shoddy renovation as well. We've seen that, just get it licked and flicked and ready for ready for sale.
I think our stats show 30% of the properties that we present to the client are purchased, so 1 in 3, for example.
Wow. Okay.
But we're also looking at a hell of a lot before we get to that stage. So, you're quite right. There might be 5 deals or 5 properties before we even make it into that due diligence stage.
So take me through, how did we end up on choosing like this particular property? What's the decision making that goes into this?
So we were building this one on, so again, Belinda was looking to build on her, she had the family home and that's it. So again, asset, not much cash, good salary, good wage, but just wanted to move through that and set up some future comfort for her. Beautiful. Whether she wanted to re-educate herself, which she's currently doing actually, or move into a different role, at least that way she's got some backup and some income. So so these properties also had the balance of strong yield, so that's 5.78% yield, which at the moment is in the positive case, but at that time, things are looking quite strong for her. But this one, so at 540 rent, we also bought that based on being a very good area, and within a short period of time, it's currently valued at 661.
Yeah, correct.
So $120,000 capital uplift on that in a very short period of time has now given her that equity. Spot on. Now is where she could keep buying. In fact, it's not shown on that slide, but we bought 3 for Belinda. Okay. So this wasn't her first one. So the first one was, so we started off small with a townhouse. That was 310. Yep. Rented for 600, yield of 6%. Nice. And that's currently at 375. So using that, taking that equity release there. Then the second one was another townhouse because she wanted to buy, again, a bit nervous. Yeah. This was only $205,000. All right. Can't build it for that, right? Correct. But renting for $350, so 8.8%. So yield is really important. Get cash up for her, and then felt I feel more comfortable and doubled her budget. We bought 540, right? Yeah. So and that's now at 661. So she's in a really nice position. Now it's just hold. Let's just consolidate for the moment. We obviously could go and buy more with that equity release, right? But we're not. Let's consolidate. Let's see where the market puts you in the right position, and then we'll go again with her. Yeah, and that's that acquisition phase that we talk a lot about clients, which is you're not consistently going to keep buying. You might go through a period of rapid acquisition, hold for a little bit, realign, check back in, for example, and then go again. And it might be market. Finance, where are we up to in the finance side? I tell stories to clients that back in, was it 15? Pre-Royal Commission.
Yeah.
Do you remember those days when we all wore cowboy hats? we bought 5 properties in 1 year. It's personally my wife and I, because the banks just kept throwing one-page loans at us. We just kept signing it. And we're like, let's keep buying. Now, we
think about
do that
things like
today,
actual repayments, 100% of rental income, no expenses, no living expenses, checks, for example, didn't care about credit cards. It was like, oh my gosh, like you had no idea how good it was from a finance perspective then.
Correct.
We will never see that. And I'm like, it will just continue to get harder. Yep. Like it's never gotten easier to borrow. So the standard's already been set. The banks aren't going to roll back on this, for example. Like they talk about the APRA stress test and like APRA's standing firm. They're not going to move on that serviceability buffer at the moment at 3%.
Yeah.
Unless there's massive pressure. But at the moment, they're kind of standing firm on that. So it's like, well, the goalpost will continue to move as an investor.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, mate, thanks very much. Well, let's jump into the next one, this is Rod. So general manager, he's scaled up his portfolio from 1 to 4. Mm-hmm. We can see here, one of the things that I personally see a lot of is senior to mid-level management, which is how do I replace my income so I don't have to keep working like a donkey, for example. Yes, they know they're on pretty good incomes, but they also know there's a sense of job insecurity. At any point, the higher that they go in their career, the harder it becomes because, I don't know, redundancies, cost cutting, for example, they can often fall victim to. It's like, what's my fallback plan? And to pick up another job that's highly specialised or skilled as they have it could be a little bit of time as well. So I think that plays in their mind a little bit going, I am one of my greatest assets, which is my income and my ability to earn, but my greatest strength is my greatest weakness.
Yeah.
And then what is my exit strategy, possibly out of white collar as well?
Big one. It's a big one. Yeah. I mean, I've been through it myself. That pyramid that gets tied up the top and, I was made redundant, sold the company and, it was hard to find that big job again. And, hindsight, I didn't plan it this way, but hindsight says one of the reasons I always said we invested was to give me options later in life. And so the option I always wanted was to do my own thing and be an entrepreneur. Yeah. And hence moving into the property space was what I wanted to do in the buying space.
And property gives you something to like leverage, right? Like you can leverage your income to borrow, but that's only going to get you so far. Leveraging equity to then reinvest becomes, that's a secret weapon for a lot of investors, isn't it?
And I guess luckily enough for us, we started a bit earlier, whereas Rod actually migrated to Australia with a young family. Yeah. And so you said exactly what he thought. And our discussion was that he's in his 40s at a very senior role, very big job. But I think he also didn't want to keep moving. He landed in Manly. So you can imagine he's like,
you've hit the jackpot.
I'm done, right? I'm not moving out of this country. So if something happens with my job, I'm not heading to another country to keep moving. So I think he's done his travels now. Yeah. Being that expat sort of lifestyle he had. But I think, like you said, he's hit the jackpot. So he said, okay, let's buy some property. Again, interesting husband and wife. Wife was definitely far less motivated to do this, very fearful, very, very worried about how this would go. He understood. He uses consultants, PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, all those firms that we've all used in our corporate careers every day. So he knows he uses experts in their field to do that for him because he's too busy during the day to do that.
Yeah, nice one.
And so it made sense for him to reach out and use our services to get him going. And so he bought that one in Springwood. Yep. Again, started small, but was looking for that variance with that strong. That was about almost 6% yield. Yep. And then his second one was pretty much within that later in that month or in this next month in Rothwell, again in that sort of good circle of Brisbane. Yeah. But that one got a very good uplift very quickly. Okay. So the yield's a bit lower. 4.75, but bought it for 680. Now it's 760. Okay. So I did very well from a capital growth, buying in a stronger area. Yeah. And then went to Morayfield, which is a bit in that sort of still in that Moreton Bay region. Yeah. A bigger block of land, a bit more opportunity with that block. But even that one, from a capital growth, 550, 848. Wow. So
is that without doing anything to that property?
Nothing at all.
Yeah, right. Because, the first instinct that people have is going, and the cynic in this goes, I don't believe that. Like, how did you buy that? Then the uplift get revalued, for example. So was it a matter of buying and negotiating well? Was it a matter of buying at the right time and then holding for a little bit? Was it a matter of getting multiple valuations done? Like how does that uplift kind of happen, mate?
That was just buying at the right time. So we negotiated well. We knew we've actually bought a couple on that street. Funny enough.
Yeah.
So we know the agent well. We know the street well. We know that suburb. We're watching those areas because they're affordable areas to get into. Families got squeezed out of Brisbane.
Yeah.
We had all our Victorian cousins moving up the border in after COVID, and they squeezed that market dry.
Yeah.
And they were happy to pay $50,000 more.
Yeah.
Because $1 million is rushing them into from Melbourne. That money into Brisbane is getting them a very nice house, Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast.
Yeah, spot on.
So the locals, these are the locals, pushing that market up.
And that's again where you see that real uplift is owner-occupied. Like that owner-occupied street appeal, for example. People want to be in that particular area, corridor. They're going to pay a premium.
4-bedroom house, good block of land.
It ticks all the boxes,
it's a winner,
right?
that one, yeah.
4-bedroom, good block of land. That's where pretty much the bulk of Australian families want to be calling home. Keep that Australian dream alive.
Yeah, sub 0.5% vacancy rates. So there's people lining up to rent there. That's renting at yielding at 6.71.
Wow.
$710 a week. So it's a really good buy. So that's good. And he's also in the interim of all that, he got so confident, and the wife did, they actually bought a house in Manly as well. So they really put some roots down.
There we go, right? And that's why we talk about building confidence. It's the first one will lead to the next one, will lead to the next one after that. So well done. And we'll jump to the next one, which I think is an interesting one. So we get Aussie expats who are on really, really good incomes overseas. We're saying before, clients that are over in the Emirates, for example, or Singapore out of the UK, or even the US. They probably won't be on those incomes when they get here, just because those jobs maybe either don't exist or they're highly, highly specialised and really get generous tax benefits as well by being in those countries. However, again, it's a double-edged sword going, I'm going to make hay while the sun shines. I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've got family. And at some point, they're going, well, they've got family back here in Australia. They will, Australia calls, it's home, so it's calling them.
Yeah.
But while they've got these great incomes, how do I leverage that to work for me to buy assets? But the other thing that we mentioned was, and the Australian property market, they can't get their head around it when they're not here, because they're going, hang on, this thing just keeps exceeding all expectations.
Yeah.
And it seems to defy and buck trends. So take me through kind of how these conversations go, expats.
Yeah, the expat, they understand property market. Dan is actually in the financial sector.
Okay, yeah.
So earning very good money, understands how to buy shares and equity and things like that. But just wanted to build a bit of a base for himself when he gets back here.
Yep.
I find that age is normally high school for kids.
Yes.
We want to get them set up for high school, right? So we tend to do our moving around while they're before high school. And I think Dan's in that same, he's not sure how long the golden handcuffs are going to last for. So he wanted to build that up, and, he'll keep buying. We're talking to him already now again. So for him was, he had quite a strict vision of what he wanted. He wanted cash flow, even though which bucks the trend, right? He's saying, but you're earning a lot of money.
Correct.
We normally say to earn a lot of money, buy capital growth properties.
That's
but
right.
He was quite clear, coming from a financial industry background, he understands yield, cash flow. So he wanted a higher cash flow property. So, he's bought a close to 6.2, one's 5.75% yield. Houses, good blocks, big blocks of land with the future potential.
Yeah.
So these are zoned in areas or close, what we call the ripple effect of zoning, that in time, he's got no intention to be a developer, but he knows that will drive the value of his property up. One day, he could build a duplex if he wanted, or he could sell it to someone to do it, or he could do something with it. But it's the value of that land is going to be more because the zoning will change.
Spot on. It's funny you say that, because pretty much 90% of the expat clients we've got are looking for that X factor in a property.
Yeah.
They will buy it maybe a little bit more run down, for example, but it's either a big corner block or they've got the ability to buy side by side and going, I don't have aspirations to develop yet.
Yep.
But if I come out of corporate, for example, I then have the ability to pull the trigger on this or sell it with that in mind as well.
Very common, because they're not in that, so there's so many different strategies. They're not in that position that they don't really want to do some cosmetic renovation to that while they're in Dubai. A lot of our clients will do that. We help them do that for them. They haven't got time. But he wasn't in that mindset. So he's thinking, he's at that age where he's got time on his hands. Yeah. He's in his early 30s, so there's no rush. Nice. So he can sit on that for 10 years and maybe think about something later. So, he had a very clear message, and his mindset was quite strong on what he wanted to do.
Beautiful. And I also thank you very much. Like I said, it's you said that buyers agents are saying, "Oh, look, we're buying and we're getting great results," and maybe it's a picture of a house, but we don't actually know where it is or what the results are. So I want to really say thank you for laying this open and being really, really transparent, because I feel like that is where, if you're getting results, then why aren't we open to sharing it?
Yeah.
It's quite where buyers agents are typically looking to buy, but it's, again, that secret sauce that comes with engaging someone like yourself and Search Party to go, right, I know what outcome I'm looking for. How do you help me get there as well?
Yeah, there's lots of data available freely now. There's some great educators out there as well. When you and I are coming through, you read books or went to seminars, and most of those seminars were spruikers. You had to run to the back of the room to buy a property. Yeah. So it's really much easier. But like you said, that suburb level, street level relationships with the so in the boom period, the agents they were getting 100 calls a day.
Correct.
There was no way they were going to call an independent, mum and dad looking for an investment property, right? They knew the buyers agent had clients ready to go, and we were able to negotiate and get that deal, and many times off market.
Yeah, well said. Mate, thank you so much. What we're going to do is put the details. If you want to reach out to the team at Search Party, by all means, you do your due diligence and you find who's aligned, and from results and then an ethos perspective. But I can say that we've had a couple of clients that have used yourself and your team, which is why I know that I've seen the results firsthand. So, if you feel aligned, feel free to reach out to them as well. But what we'd also love is if you've got any other burning questions, because I feel like this is part one. We're going to have to do part two, which is maybe a couple of other different properties as well, a couple of different clients. And maybe we tackle the finance side of it, which is how we get the equity out, and different valuations of different banks. I think it's probably where we can build on this conversation too, mate. So I want to say thank you very much for jumping on board. Been fantastic. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening as well. We really, really hope you found this helpful. If you have, we'd love if you could leave a comment or drop us a question, and we'd love to answer that for you as well. That's a wrap for another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Thanks very much.